Our next example of how to draw curves in the toolset is a function that will let us make arcs and circles inside the canvas without thinking of them as corners on some straight lines. So let's open up another file. The file I'm looking for here is Drawing Arcs number 3. We'll open it up in the browser, and you can see we've just got an empty canvas ready to work with, and we'll go ahead and open it up in the text edit application so we can edit it. Again, I can see my canvas has already been created. We even have the same border style so we can see the borders of the canvas here, and I've gone ahead and started out the script in this case. So we can now just start working on the drawing elements. Now the function we're going to use is just called arc, and it requires several parameters just like the others did. This one is going to need an x and a y coordinate for the center point of the arc that we're going to create. Then we need to give it a measure for the radius, then a start angle and an end angle. Now this is going to be part of a circle if we're making an arc like that. And finally, we can determine if the arcs go clockwise or counterclockwise with a Boolean value at the end. So let's see what that all looks like. First, I'm going to go down here, and we're going to add a line so we can start drawing. It's a good practice to begin a new path whenever you're drawing a shape, so I'm going to start off with context.beginPath. And then we're going to call our arc function. Again, context.arc. And now we need those parameters. Now I'm going to set up our arc so that it's going to start at 150 by 150 pixels. Since our canvas is 300 pixels wide and tall, that should be right in the center. And just so we can see a nice big radius, I'm going to use 100 for that, so it'll fill up most of the area. Next we have the start angle and the end angle. Now basically we can pick a start position along a circle. Let's say 0 degrees would be straight out to the side. And we can specify an ending position to draw to. So if we drew to 180 degrees, we'd have the bottom half of a circle. Now the only trick here is that this function needs to have that angle measurement in radians and not in degrees. So we're going to have to do a little conversion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to set up two variables that will take the place of our start angle and end angle. I'll call the first one start ang, and I'll call the second one end ang. And we'll fill those in a moment. Then we need to determine if our arc is going to be clockwise or counterclockwise. And it works like this. We're going to set up a Boolean value for this value here at the end. If I type in true, then our arc will be counterclockwise. And if I use false in its place, then it'll be clockwise. Let me close off the parentheses and finish this line. And of course, next we need to go and define those two variables that we set up in here. Let me add a line for it up here at the top. And I'll use my var keyword again. And the first variable we want to define is start ang. Now radians are based on the value of pi with circles, but it's a good thing that that's already built into JavaScript as a constant. So let's set up the conversion value we need. We start with the angle measurement that we want to convert. And for the start angle, I think I'm going to use 45. We can think of a horizontal going out from the center and 45 degrees going down towards the bottom corner of the canvas. So we'll set that up as 45 degrees. And in order to convert that to radians, we need to multiply that by pi. So I'll use multiply. And the built-in value of pi can be found by typing math.pi. And notice pi is in capital letters, and so is the m in math. Next, we divide that by 180 degrees, and we have radians. Now you can see why it's nice to make this into a variable, because it keeps all this calculation part out of our function call. Now let's compute the end ang next. I'm going to use the same line, and we'll just change the name, end ang, and set it to a different degree measurement. I'll set it to 180, and that would be extending off to the right-hand side of the center of the circle. So we'll put that in as 180. Now I want to see what we're drawing, so let's go ahead and draw a stroke with this as well. That's context dot, and then just stroke. And since we haven't specified any kind of stroke style, we'll just be seeing that appear as a black line. Well, I think we're ready to try it out, so I'll just save my changes. And let's go back to our browser and refresh the page. And there's our line drawn. Now let me go back over to the code so we can look at the settings we used to draw this. I set it at an x and a y of 150, and you can see that the center of the circle is clearly in the center of my canvas. Also, we have a radius of 100 pixels, and you can see it goes out about 2/3 the distance here, so that looks to be right for about 100 pixels. And then we'll take a look at the start angle and the end angle. Now you can see I started at 45. And the way our circles work, a horizontal line would be 0 degrees, and as we run around clockwise, we would see 45 degrees there. Our end angle was 180 degrees, and you can see that's all the way around the other side of the circle here. And the last value we said true, which indicates that our circle should be drawn counterclockwise. So you can see it took our starting value and drew a line counterclockwise all the way around to our ending value. Now, just like all the other drawing functions that we're going to be looking at, we can stroke and fill the paths. So let's just try that out and see how that looks. I'll go down here below the stroke setting, and first let me add in a fill style so we can select the color for our fill. As usual, I'll start with context, and then fill style, and we'll set it equal to just the named color green, so we can see the difference between the stroke and the fill. And then, of course, if we want our fill to show up, we'll need to add one more line, context, and we'll just call the fill function itself. And before we go and test this, let's see what a clockwise circle looks like. We can just go to that last value in our drawing of the arc, and we set it to true before. We'll just change that to false. And now we should get a clockwise drawn circle instead of a counterclockwise one. Let's save our changes, and let's go out to the browser and see what we've got. I'll refresh, and now we're seeing the circle is drawn in a clockwise fashion from 45 to 180. And you can also see that the fill here is just connecting the dots between the beginning and ending points and creating that fill shape for us. Now, the last thing I wanted to show is if you wanted to draw a circle, it's pretty easy using this technique. You just change the values to 0 for a starting value and 360 for the ending value. Our conversions will still work with these new values, so we can just save the changes, and let's go back and refresh our page, and now we're seeing a complete circle drawn.